My name is Walter Daria. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and this is my 2019 online Wahl Barber Battle. I'm going to first start this haircut off by doing my first guideline using my magic clips. With the clipper lever closed, I'm going to create my first guideline from around the mid-temple point, a little bit above the ears, dropping it down underneath the occipital bone in the back of the head. Once I've done this, now I can take my Wahl 5-star shaver and bald out the rest of the hair. Using light pressure, I'm going to ensure I don't cause a line or take it up too high, keeping it about a 1/4 inch underneath my first initial guideline. You don't want to put too much pressure, and you want to let the shaver do the work, as you can cause microscopic cuts that you won't be able to see to the naked eye. Once you're done with this, now you can take your number 1 attachment, clipper lever open, and create your second guideline. I do this in order to know where specifically certain lengths of the hair are, so that way when I'm blending, I'm not doing any guesswork. So now I'm going to take my Wahl 1919 Seniors and begin to blend the first guideline out. Using the lever open to close in certain areas, I'm going to start to buffer and erase this first line. Once I'm done with that, since I know my second guideline was set with the number 1 attachment open, I'm going to put my number 1 attachment on, close the clipper, and start to work that bottom line out. All while stretching and taunting the skin to create a better work surface or surface area for a better blend. Keep in mind you want to stretch the skin also for certain divots and dents in the bone structure. That way you can use the corner of the blade to create a better blending area. Once you realize the number 1 attachment close isn't taking enough weight out, you can switch to your 0.5 attachment or your half guard and start to erase some of that line out. Now switch it to my 3 guard, and I'm going to begin the process of reverse fading my top guideline. Every time I drop down a guard or go down to a smaller attachment, I'm going to work that same area, that same weight line, but just smaller strokes, sometimes using just the corner of the blade. Working all the way down back to my number 1 attachment, I should be able to erase that last line of demarcation using just the corner of my blade and stretching the skin nice and tight. Once I got one side of the haircut done, I can move on to the other side and repeat the same steps. Once I have the haircut about 80-90% done, I'll go back and do some more fine tuning. Using my Wahl Cordless Seniors, now I'm going to go back and clean up some of the areas where I felt like there was a little bit of line of demarcation. Using just the corner of the blade, you can achieve this goal. Once you're done with this, if you have any lines from where you use your Wahl 5-star shaver, you can go in with your retro T-cut liner with the trimmer inverted, light pressure. You can begin to flick out some of those lines. Assessing his hairline, you can see that his hairline isn't perfectly symmetrical and his hair growth pattern isn't perfectly straight. You always want to be sure you don't push back his hairline or go too far into the temple areas or the corner. You can still give him a nice clean and crisp edge up to complement that fade. All while using light pressure and working from the middle to the sides to the corner. Now once you're done doing that, you can go back and pull up underneath this collar line or any other areas where you feel like you may have left a few hairs in the balding process and clean it up with the razor or your trimmer. This is the mid to low drop fade. Now onto the modernized mullet. With this, you're going to do more of a scalp analysis, more detailed scalp analysis. You want to make sure there's no changes in hair growth pattern. You want to look for any moles, anything that can cause the desired look to be faulted. So you want to wet the hair down a little bit. That way it's easier to move. Starting off with my number 2 attachment on my Wahl 1919 Seniors, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my first guideline from around the corner area of the temple to about the top of the ear. Once I have this out the way, now I can see exactly where I want to blend. Now I'm going to start off by doing a small burst fade. I'm going to use my Wahl Magic Clips, and I'm going to angle my first guideline down so I can keep the edge up area nice and clean and dark. Once I'm done doing this, I'll take my Wahl 5-star shavers and I'll begin to bald out that small area. Again, not using too much pressure because we don't want to create a line we can't get out or any microscopic cuts. Let the shaver do the work. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Wahl 1919 Seniors with my clipper lever open. I'm going to create another guideline. Now, once you have this done, now you can work your lever up and down to the middle, open and close, to start to buffer that bottom line out. All while stretching the skin nice and tight, it can act as an easier surface area for you to be able to achieve this blend. Once you have gotten that done, now you can take your 1.5 attachment. Now you can begin the reverse fade. Because you know your areas and where you set your first guidelines at, you know where you don't want to go up with, where you want to keep your attachments at or your guards at. Now, every time you switch down to a smaller attachment or a smaller guard, you want to work that same area, that same line of demarcation, but use smaller strokes. As you can see, because it's a small area of me blending, I'm going to use only the corner of my blades or the corner of my attachments, all while still keeping the skin nice and taut and stretching it for a flatter and even surface area. Once you're completed this blend, start your clipper over comb technique. I like to use clipper over comb after I use my number 2 guard because if you notice, you put your comb flat to the surface area of the hair, you notice when you cut, it leaves about a number 2 size attachment anyways, or a number 2's length. Instead of putting my 3, 4, 5 guard on, I'm going to use this and angle it and keep my clipper lever open. This helps me achieve that nice blend without having to go through all my extra guards or go through extra steps. Now you may have to put your 1.5 guard on or your 1.5 attachment and clean up and do some more detailed work or some fine blending after you're done with this. Anytime I'm doing clipper over comb, I usually have my clipper lever open so I don't create any lines of demarcation or go into the hair that I didn't want to do. Once you're done with that, you can take your retro T-cut liner and give them a nice clean crisp edge up from the corner of the temple on down. Once I'm done with that, now I can move on to the longer lengths of the hair. Using my Wahl Cordless Seniors, I'm going to cut the top of the hair. The reason why I'm using these is because the motion of the moving blade and the still blade, it cuts, pushes, cuts, pushes, cuts, pushes. So with that said, it kind of leaves a little bit more of a textured look instead of a really clean, hard, blunt line on the longer lengths. Once I have the desired lengths done, of course, shorter on top, longer in the back, now I want to create some movement in the back. So what I can do is I'll take my same Wahl Cordless Senior and I'm going to point cut, create some valleys. What this does, it helps create movement, helps take some texture out, it helps take some weight out without taking any length off the back. Always remember when you're combing through the hair and you're using your clipper to do your other hand, you always want to make sure when you're combing, keep your clipper off. That way you don't cut into the hair that you're not looking to do. Once I'm done with that, now I'm going to wet and part off the very, very edge of the nape area, and I'm going to give him a nice clean line in the back without going into any of the length. Always remember, you never want to drag. You always want to just tap with your T-liners. And to get the more of the bulk out, you want to invert the clipper and clean up to the nape area. Once you're done with this, you can always take your Wahl clipper comb or all-purpose comb, and you can use that to blow dry and style the hair. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take the comb and I'm going to comb it straight in. I'm going to flip it towards me at about 180 degrees. I'm going to pull out. What this does, this grabs and snags the hair while you're blow drying, and this helps create volume and that desired look that you're looking for. Once you're done, add any type of styling product to create that desired look or style you're looking for. There it is. Business in the front, party in the back. My take on the modern mullet. So now we're going to be doing the Caesar cut. With his scalp analysis, I'm checking the contour of his head shape. I'm checking for his hair density. His hair isn't too coarse, and like I said, the contour of his head, we don't want to take it too short, too high. You don't want to sacrifice the length on top, just trying to get the blend nice and clean the way you want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with like maybe number 2 on the sides, more of a medium fade, and we're going to do a gradual blend up. So first what I'm going to start off is my number 2 attachment on my Wahl 1919 seniors, and we're going to start off by making that first guideline. Next, we're going to take a number 4 attachment, and we're going to make a second guideline about 1.5 inches above that first guide. Now that we have this done, now I can take my number 3 attachment and start the blending process. With my lever going open and close, buffering out this line, I'm going to start to take out this weight. Once you realize you can't take any more weight, now you can switch to your number 2 attachment with the open and begin to flick out that very bottom or very first guideline you first initially started with. Now using my clipper over comb technique, I'm going to keep this comb angled at such a level to where I can take some of the weight out without taking any length. And by doing this, I'm going to keep my clipper lever completely open and making sure I'm checking my angles as to not going too deep to where I'm taking too much weight out. It's always important in the shop to have some type of contrast. When you're working with darker hair, you want to have a lighter contrast so you can check and see, especially with this type of texture and density of hair, you can see where the hair sticks out or where that line of demarcation is, looking from the side, having your lighter contrast in the background so you can see what you're actually doing and going for that desired style. Now what I'm going to be doing, I'm just going to be doing a normal tint fade or a blowout using my Wahl magic clips. I'm going to start my first guidelines around the temple areas and in the back nape area. Using my Wahl 5-star shavers, I'm going to begin the balding process. Now once I've done that, now I'm going to take my Wahl 1919 seniors and I'm going to begin blending this out. I'm going to blend up instead of reverse fade in other videos. It's a little easier with this one because now I can keep my blend nice and tight, and I know exactly where my levels of hair or lengths of hair are at because I've already faded the sides underneath the crown area. Now, again, when I'm usually doing my tint fades or blowouts, I'm using mainly the corner of my blades because it's a smaller area to blend, and stretching the skin also helps because it's giving me a flatter or an even surface area to be able to blend these areas out. Again, always check for any divots or the occipital bone, especially the nape area. You want to try to stretch that skin. You want to make sure that it's not just a fold or a crease in his skin or muscle area, you want to make sure that you get in there with the corner of the clipper and make sure that's not a line of demarcation with the hair. Now once I'm done doing that, I'm not taking any length off the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my number 4 attachment with my clipper lever open completely. Instead of going against the grain, I'm going to somewhat angle it to where I don't have that guard completely flat, and I'm going to go across the grain. What this does, it's going to help create some movement and some texture in his hair. Now, once I'm done, I'm going to blow dry and kind of get his hairline nice and flat in the front to where I can do a nice clean edge up without going into his hairline and still keeping his fringe area nice and thick. Again, I'm not taking any length off it. I'm just cleaning it up, getting a nice clean look. Taking my retro T-cut liners, I'm going to edge up the nape area, around the ears, around the temple areas. Again, like I said before, I'm going to invert my trimmers and clean up the bulk of the nape area. This is your Caesar. 2 on the sides, faded temples, faded out neckline. So I just want to do a quick shout out and a huge thank you to the outstanding people of Wahl. I appreciate the opportunity and taking the time to watch this video. Again, my name is Walter Daria. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and this was my 2019 online Wahl Barber Battle.